Spring 1891. On the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, 83-year-old German immigrant Jacob Waltz is having a string of bad luck.
Jacob Waltz is a prospector who has come to Arizona during the gold boom in the 1860s.
By 1891, he is a farmer, and his farm home has been basically ruined in a massive flood.
Some accounts have him spending as many as 2 nights in a tree to avoid the water, contracting pneumonia in the process.
Jacob is nursed back to health by a woman named Julia Thomas, who's 29 years old, so she's much younger than Jacob. Now, she runs a boarding house that Jacob eventually moves into, and since they both speak German, they eventually develop a rapport.
What happens next is Jacob is visited by some of his friends who bring 5 sacks of gold that they recovered from his farmhouse.
Julia perks up, as anyone would, and she starts to realize, maybe there's more to this scruffy-looking man than she first thought.
Julia plays nurse for several months, taking care of Waltz, and they grow close.
With that growing trust and friendship, Jacob confides in Julia where the gold his friends brought is from.
He tells her that the gold is from a mine that is hidden in the Superstition Mountains nearby, and that it's filled with gold.
Jacob confides in Julia. This mine has over $20 million in gold, which in today's dollars would be around $700 million.
The Superstition Mountains are sacred territory to the Apache Native Americans who are indigenous to this area.
So according to Apache lore, the Superstition Mountains are named as such because it's the home of their thunder god, who lives in the mountain, and according to their legend, he will kill anyone who trespasses there.
The historical root of this tradition seems to lie in events from the 1840s.
There was a family from Mexico City called the Peraltas, and they made it a point to mine the gold in there. And the Apaches told them that they should not be in the mountains. So one day, the Peraltas got tired of the harassment, and so they decided to pack up and leave and take their whole operation back to Mexico.
The Apaches dynamite some of the mines closed, but according to legend, one of them stays open.
Waltz claims that 10 years later, while prospecting on his own, he comes across the last Peralta mine.
Waltz goes inside, and what does he find? Gold everywhere. So much gold, he can cut it off the walls. It's embedded in quartz, it's gold ore. There's veins of gold everywhere.
Then, many years later, on his deathbed, he makes something of a confession to what might have been his only friend.
He says that when he recovers, he's going to take her to this mine, but his situation only gets worse. And so he develops a stroke, he's partially crippled, but he is still able to draw this map. And it has these cryptic clues to the location of this mine. One of the clues that Jacob leaves behind for Julia is he says that at the entrance of the mine, it looks like an upside-down funnel.
One of the other clues is that from the mine's entrance, you can see what he calls a military trail.
Another clue is that a particular shadow would be cast from Weaver's Needle, which is a distinctive geological formation in the Superstition Mountains.
The entrance to the mine is within the shadow cast of Weaver's Needle. And the sun will shine into the mine's entrance, and the mine is located on a north-south running canyon with a rock face near the entrance.
Waltz dies on October 25th, 1891, taking the mine's exact location to his grave.
Julia immediately determines to go and find the lost mine. But after months of searching, using the clues and the map that Waltz had left, they are unable to find anything. No gold, no mine, nothing.
She gets to the point where she becomes financially destitute, and eventually she has to give up because she can't find it. But she does decide to tell a newspaper everything that Jacob had told her.
And the story begins to spread, and this is how this whole new fervor starts looking for gold in the Superstition Mountains.
With these articles, the term Lost Dutchman's Mine is invented. Interestingly enough, Waltz is not Dutch, he's German. A lot of German immigrants during this period, and the Americans hear Deutsch, which is German for German, but the name Dutch sticks, and so they become known as Dutch immigrants.
People now pour into the Superstition Mountains in search of the hidden treasure.
Numerous lives have been lost in Arizona's Superstition Mountains in the hunt for the Lost Dutchman's Mine.
In 1914, Erwin Ruth, the son of an amateur treasure hunter named Adolf Ruth, travels to Mexico on business.
While he's in Mexico, one version of the story is that Erwin saves the life of a government official.
The official learns about his father's interest in Western folklore and treasure, and it so happens that this Mexican has some connection to treasure in the American West. He is in fact a distant relative of the Peraltas, and he gives to Erwin some maps of the fabled Peralta mines somewhere in the Superstition Mountains. Erwin is not especially interested in the maps, but his father certainly is. He has them inspected and dated to around the time of the Mexican Revolution, which seems to provide some sense of authenticity. The maps are, in some ways, legible, in that they seem to denote a particular area, the Superstition Mountains. But other things about them don't make sense.
He's studying this map and he's looking at the geography, and it doesn't quite match up.
Ultimately, Ruth concludes that people have been looking in the wrong place the whole time. Weaver's Needle is not the key. It's in fact another equally distinct geological formation, Blacktop Mesa.
So Adolf Ruth decides to go on this solo expedition to Blacktop Mesa using these maps to try to find this secret hidden mine that it supposedly holds the clues to.
Adolf Ruth arrives in Arizona in the spring of 1931, a 66-year-old with chronic pain and a limp.
Adolf Ruth is about 5 feet tall and just about 100 pounds wet, so he's not the guy to be going into the mountains at that time. What happens is Ruth finds some ranch hands that are willing to make a few extra bucks to take Ruth in and set him up in a camp.
So, June 14th, 1931, they take him to a place called Willow Springs, and that's where they leave him.
After about a week, they don't hear from him, so they go into the mountains looking for him, and they don't find him. His camp has been abandoned.
Nothing more is heard about Adolf Ruth for several months, and then some campers eventually make a discovery.
Over near the Salt River, some campers end up finding a message in a bottle, and it's allegedly from Ruth. And it says, "I'm under a tree, I'm injured. P.S. I found the Lost Dutchman's Mine."
Fast forward to December. They eventually do find Ruth's skull, just a skull, no body, and there is what appears to be a bullet hole in it.
About a month after they discover Ruth's head, his body is found. And none of his belongings are missing, except for the maps.
In a bag, he has a checkbook in which he's written some notes. One of the most relevant notes is the Latin phrase Veni Vidi Vici, which is Julius Caesar's words, "I came, I saw, I conquered."
Does that mean that Ruth found the fabled Lost Dutchman's Mine? Well, some of his other scribbles suggest that maybe he did.
Unfortunately, most of what he writes doesn't make sense. The only thing he does leave that you can read is something about a mysterious circle and then fields of black basaltic rock.
All of these elements add up to a media sensation, which is attractive to audiences in the depths of the Great Depression, where their eyes look west to a place where most Americans will never go, except in their imaginations, a place where they can imagine themselves leading more authentic, more exciting, more dangerous lives. It reignites interest in the Lost Dutchman Mine, interest that has not abated to this day.